I originally wanted to put this in the, therapy is not a magical cure for mental illness video. And I just sort of decided to scrap it just because it didn't feel super relevant to the actual topic of the video. It felt like I was veering a little off too much. But it seems like from what I've seen in, comment sections across many platforms, we seem to have an issue. So that whole go to therapy mindset that the internet has seemingly adopted, where they seem to think that therapy is a cure-all for literally every mental problem you can have, and it's a way to dismiss people that are trying to speak about their issues and whatnot, and all that nonsense that I spoke about in the other video. Yeah, that's bleeding into our close relationships now. This isn't just a dunk on people that you don't know on the internet. People are using this in their close relationships as well. How are they doing that, might you ask? Some folks, specifically Generation Z children and young adults, seem to think that a friend confiding in them their problems is considered trauma dumping, rather than just being part of being a friend. Trauma dumping is when a person unloads extremely heavy stuff in inappropriate situations. Meaning, you're with a person you barely know and they suddenly, unleash their life story of abuse on you when you were not ready for that and you barely know them. That could be considered trauma dumping. Going into your favorite celebrity's DMs and just trauma dumping like your worst experiences in a way to say thank you for being there for them. Trauma dumping. A lot of trauma dumping is, saying stuff to people in inappropriate situations without warning. That's trauma dumping. Venting somebody's, personal issues to a close friend is not trauma dumping. That's called being a friend. Gen Z and some other people that have never gotten the chance from older generations are learning about boundaries. Boundaries are a good thing. However, Gen Z seems to think that boundaries mean that relationships need to be emotionless, isolated, and clinical. Gen Z and some misguided older folks are weaponizing psychology terms and progressive language to justify being a generally terrible person. Essentially, we are doing the whole, becomes so enlightened we become reactionary thing again. It keeps fucking happening. I'm tired of it. There seems to be this mindset on the don't touch grass part of the internet that seems to think that being a friend means only dealing with the good parts of a person, that you only have to deal with their best parts, and then deeming everything else not your business. Newsflash, buckaroo, that's not a friend. That's entertainment. That's a TV show. That's a transaction, not a friendship. Here are some examples of the whole go to therapy and not my business mindset that is poisoning your interpersonal relationships. I still sometimes think about this time I needed to vent and my ex got upset and suggested that I see my therapist. Not even mad at this point, but it's like we care about mental health so long as it's compartmentalized. We should still be sympathetic, supportive to each other. I just got icky flashbacks about that woman who had some foster kids and complained about how they were always trauma dumping on her. I hope these kids are in a better home now. No, the worst iteration of this was a trauma therapist on TikTok who complained about clients trauma dumping. So not only is this happening in one's friendships, but we're seeing this happen between, spouses, even though that's part of being a spouse is being there to support your partner. Even scarier, between terminally online parents and their children, whether they be foster parents or just, regular old parents. No, your child is not trauma dumping on you. You're their fucking parent. Be a fucking parent. That is part of parenting. You need to get over yourself immediately. And, in the worst case scenario, an actual trauma therapist complaining about having her clients trauma dump on her. You get paid to do that. That's part of your fucking job. So as you can see, our mindsets have been so deeply poisoned by whatever the fuck this is. All of these instances and all of the other stories I've seen between friendships, relationships, parents, indicate to me that people have been emboldened by this go to therapy and not my problem, not my business mindset, to believe that relationships are just entertainment, like the unending scroll of constant content we consume every day. What an alliteration I just gave you there. People are starting to treat their relationships like the parasocial relationships that they foster with celebrities and influencers, where they, demand only the good from this person and only see or want to see the good from this person and use them as, their own personal entertainment and, fantasy generator. You want to see a performance from another person rather than, treating them and being a real human person. And, creating and maintaining real human relationships. This is genuinely scary to me. We are creating a generation of young adults and children that are already lonely, by the way, and making them into emotionless, selfish people that cannot create and maintain connections with other people, which is exasperating an already existing issue in the West, particularly the United States. Not to mention the concept that emotional support is supposed to be done transactionally by a professional rather than via, your authentic friendships and connections is one of the most dystopian things I've ever heard in my fucking life. That is part of making relationships. That's not supposed to be, a purely transactional professional service. You guys are acting like it can only be isolated to a professional transaction from a doctor. You guys scare me. And even when you do go to a therapist, the therapist always asks, on your first visit, whether or not you've got a support system. So the therapist themselves wants other people in your life to be your support system. Boundaries are good, and there are situations where you need to use them. For instance, a friend that, is constantly venting to you, but you never get to vent back and they won't let you vent back. And they're just constantly dropping shit on you all the time without ever reciprocating that support. They aren't being a good friend because they also need to reciprocate that support. And they also, need to check in every once in a while to make sure that everything is okay for them to do so. That's a good boundary to set. And I do agree that that friend shouldn't be doing that. And that also brings up a good point, is that a lot of the people that complain about trauma dumping are often the friends that always ask for support but never want to give support. It does, support my conclusion that a lot of people that throw around the word trauma dumping in inappropriate situations, it just tells me that you're one of those people that don't want to be a good friend and want to, use all your friends for emotional transactions and never actually be a good friend. And when, they want to, have mutual support, you call that trauma dumping instead of just being a good friend. But I digress. There are situations where your friend can't help you any more than they already have, and they can only support you the way they can, and somebody might ask for more, in which case sometimes that's not possible, and you do need to put a a boundary there and let them know, this is what I can offer you. I can be a friend here and I can offer this to you, but I cannot go any more or any further for support. These are boundaries. These are normal in human relationships. Boundaries don't mean, actually, every time you vent to me, that is trauma dumping. I have decided. Boundaries are normal. Telling a friend that they cannot, ever vent to you ever because you're a selfish prick that thinks human relationships are transactional and just merely entertainment for your little selfish, emotionless brain, That's not being a friend, and that's not normal. Refusing to be a good friend by using flowery, progressive language just makes you a terrible person, and it's also dystopian as fuck. Please get your shit together and screw your head on straight before you lose all of your close relationships. Thanks.